you can take the book in your hand and read what's written on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you could just start by giving us your name.
Kathryn Morris.
Thank you. And the first document we're going to look at is your witness statement, which is AHCH 000278. And you've got that statement open in front of you. Is that your witness statement?
It is, yeah.
And is that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
It is.
Great. And you can just put that to one side now.
Okay.
And just to explain for the benefit of the recording that as this evidence is being pre-recorded, we don't have the usual technology that we have in the hearing room for bringing up documents. So the witness and I will be working from a printed bundle which will have page numbers in it. But for the transcript, I'm going to give the document number reference and the page number for that separately. So there will be two sets of referencing, but I'll tell you where to go when the time comes. All right, so I just want to start off just to understand a bit about your role and your background. And I understand from your statement that in 2012 you completed a master's in social work.
That's right, yeah.
And you qualified as a social worker.
Yeah.
And that you've been HCPC registered since December 2015.
That's right, yeah.
And then I understand that after your master's you worked at the Fire and Rescue Service in Merseyside for about 3 years from 2012 to 2015.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Knowsley Children's Social Care in December 2015.
That's correct, yeah.
And then worked as a social worker within the child protection team for a period of about 4 years until 2019.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then you became a multi-systemic therapist until August 22.
That's correct, yeah.
And then looking now to your time at Alder Hey, you've been employed by CAMS at Alder Hey since the 31st of August 22.
That's correct, yeah.
And in that role you've been working firstly as a mental health practitioner.
Yeah.
And then later you became a senior mental health practitioner from May 24.
That's correct, yeah.
And just for kind of very high level overview of your involvement with AR's case, essentially you were allocated as his case manager on the 5th of September 22.
That's correct, yeah.
And is it right that you stayed as his case manager until he was discharged from CAMS on the 23rd of July 24?
Correct.
Thank you. If you just keep, I think the microphone should be picking your voice up, but just keep your voice up ever so slightly, just to be sure. Okay, so first topic I want to ask you a bit about is just the start of your involvement and the handover that you had when you came into the role.
Yeah.
So I understand you were taking over from his previous case manager, who was Miss Samantha Steed.
That's correct, yeah.
And what information do you remember having access to at the start of the involvement? Would it just be the CAMS electronic patient record?
That's correct, yeah.
And would that just have information from CAMS records or records that someone at CAMS had inputted in, essentially?
Essentially it's CAMS records, but if any information had been received from other agencies, then it could have been put up on there, yeah, it can be scanned through.
All right, but you didn't have access to the systems of other agencies?
No.
And I think you say in your statement that you looked at the electronic patient records to get up to speed when you started the case. Do you remember, would you have done a full review of those records or just had a skim read or somewhere in between?
So what I tend to do with each case that's been allocated to me is go back to the original referral that's come through and go through the case notes. With our system, it's not the easiest to navigate anyway, and I had only been there 5 days, so I was still learning where to go with some of it, so I can't say I've seen all of the documents. But what I did do is create kind of my own crib sheet, if you like, based on AR, in preparation, ready to have the first meeting with him.
All right, so you would have had a look through some of the records, you may not have looked at every record.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, let's start by, you've mentioned the crib sheet, let's start by having a look at that. And so for us, it's the very back of the bundle, I'm afraid.
That's
it's
okay.
Page 298. So this is document AHCH 000189.
Yeah.
And we can see it's some handwritten notes. Are these your notes?
They are.
And do you remember when you would have made these notes?
This was prior to me making contact with AR to arrange his first session, so it will have been early September. I think it was allocated on the 5th, so there or thereabouts before the first telephone call.
All right, and we see in this handwritten note that you reference various key events that had taken place in relation to AR.
Yeah.
So we can see there is reference to the hockey stick assault.
Yeah.
We can see there's reference to him being open to prevent.
Yeah.
But I think you've recorded that there was no further action taken in relation to prevent.
Yes.
There is a note referencing involvement of Parenting 2000.
Yes.
There's a record of the referral order that was made.
Yes.
There is a note that he was researching shootings in schools and the Manchester bombings.
Yes.
A note about carrying knives. That's about halfway down the first page, just under where the data protection action is. And on the third page, you just skip forward to page, so this is page 3 of the document, page 300 of the bundle.
Yes.
We can see that that's where the reference to prevent is, open to prevent RE terrorism, referred to forensic cams.
Correct, yeah.
And referred to CAMS, and you've noted that there was an urgent partnership referral to CAMS.
Yeah.
Okay, so various key events were noted there, and presumably this information then is things you would have got from the CAMS records.
Yes.
We've got a note of the hockey stick attack, but the inquiry's obviously heard quite a bit of evidence now about the hockey stick attack, and I just want to ask whether you were aware of some additional details about it at the time when you became aware of it. So there's been some sort of contradictory evidence at times, but it seems there was an indication that AR's intent in the hockey stick attack, at least from some of his accounts, was that he was prepared to use the knife and potentially kill the person he was targeting. Is that something that you were aware of?
With regards to the hockey stick, I'm just trying to look briefly over my notes there to see. I think there was a lot of contradiction with, I think on some CAMS notes it did say there was no intent, but on some agency notes there was intent, so I think I've seen both.
Would that have been at the time, or do you think that's probably in preparation for the inquiry or since?
I think that will have been at the time.
Right. And do you remember being aware of that he had set out to do the hockey stick attack against somebody a boy at school who he perceived had been bullying him, but he in fact ended up just attacking another boy who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, essentially?
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I think within that, I think it's the first page, I do state the names of who he was intending.
Yes, I think the name of the boy's been redacted.
Yeah.
All right. And when you first became involved, did Miss Steed or anyone else at CAMS give you a verbal or a written handover, as far as you can remember?
There was no verbal or written handover from Samantha Steed. I do recall a conversation with my ACL at the time, Assistant Clinical Lead Sam Coppard, where we did discuss various cases at the time. And to my recollection, I do believe that AR was discussed at that time. Where, do you want me to go into what that discussion was? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's where my instruction of what my focus would be with the case.
From Sam Coppard?
Yeah.
All right. I just want to now ask you about some other incidents, and I just want you to, if you can't remember, that's okay, but if you do remember either way. The question is just whether at the time you first became involved with AR, you were aware of these incidents. So one was that he'd taken a knife into school on at least 10 occasions with the intention of using it.
No, I think on my note it says 2 occasions that he carried a knife.
Right. That he'd been researching the London Bridge bombings and making comments about Israel and Palestine at school.
No, to my recollection it was the Manchester bombings and the research of shootings. I can't be 100% certain that I did or I didn't see the others.
An incident in November 2021 where AR had thrown juice over his father.
Yes, I'd seen the case note from Samantha Steed on that one.
And that also in November 2021 AR had trashed the house.
I think I did.
Right. And then there was an incident in March 22 where AR went missing from his home and he was found on a bus in possession of a knife.
Yes.
Do you remember being aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. So, in fairness to you, all of those instances are in the CAMS records. So do you think it's from your review of the records that you saw those incidents at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And I now just want to ask you about some further incidents, which I'll just say at the outset, in fairness to you, these don't appear to be in the CAMS records, so it may be that you weren't aware of them. Some of them have only come to light in the inquiry's investigation. So the first is that the inquiry has reviewed browser history and found that AR at school was on one occasion attempting to view graphic images of degloving injuries and an injury to an animal. Is that something you were aware of?
No, I wasn't.
In November 2019, he attended a lesson where he was being asked to think about how to promote a business, and he said he didn't think it would be a good idea to tell people that his business was new to the area because he thought that people would kill him as they didn't know him. And he went on to say that people don't trust others they don't know in case they get murdered.
I don't recall.
There was an incident on the 30th of November 21 where AR kicked his father and threw a plate at a rental car, causing damage to a windscreen.
Yes, I think is that within the CAMS notes?
I don't believe it is, but I'll be corrected if I'm wrong.
I can't recall if it is or it isn't.
Right. And then during an art lesson on the 3rd of December 2019, he was colouring in pictures from a video game and asked why he was allowed to look at those pictures, but couldn't look at guns on the internet, and then he asked to look at a picture of a severed head.
No, I wasn't aware.
And 1st of February 2021 he was posting material relating to Gaddafi on Instagram, which led to a second Prevent referral.
No, I wasn't aware.
And then turning to 22, January 2022, he was noted at school to have made some comments about the Holocaust, talked about the death of Princess Diana, water poisonings, and then said that in his view sometimes violence was necessary.
I don't recall seeing that.
And then there was some further details about the bus incident which don't appear to be on the CAMS records, which are that when the police asked him about the incident, he made remarks about wanting to stab people, and he said that he either had thoughts about making poison or that he tried to make poison. Were you aware of those extra details?
Not that I can recall now.
Looking at, I've obviously taken you through a huge amount of various incidents there. Looking at all of those incidents together and individually, would those incidents be relevant to your understanding of how he was presenting and also risk that he might pose?
Yes.
Would you accept that it's difficult to accurately assess risk without knowledge of those incidents?
Yes, it would have been obviously a lot helpful, yeah.
All right. You say at paragraph 11 of your statement that you'd had sight of the risk management and care plans.
Yes.
That had been completed by previous colleagues.
Yes.
And the CAMS has done an internal learning review, which you no doubt be aware of, which essentially found that CAMS practitioners had done a risk assessment on triage when he first came to the service on the 11th of October and the 15th of December. And thereafter, the risk management tool was only completed on 3 occasions. The 8th of January 2020, so that was by Mr. Scott Morgan.
Yep.
And then by you on 2 occasions, 22nd of February 24 and the 23rd of July 24.
Yeah.
Just for the tape, the reference for that is AHCH 30294, and it's paragraphs 352 and 355. So by the time that you took over as case manager in September 2022, there'd only actually been 1 post-triage risk assessment done. That was Scott Morgan's. And the inquiry's heard evidence, and I think this concurs with something you say in your statement, that the general expectation was for case managers to do the risk assessment tool every 3 months. Is that
Yes.
right? Do you remember if you were, when you first came to the case, surprised to see that no risk assessment had been done in the period from 2020 to September 22?
I think from my recollection, when I first opened the risk management plan, there was comment on there from Samantha Steed, which would make me think that she had updated it.
All right. And would you have had access to any other risk assessments from other agencies, for example, at the start of your involvement?
Not that I can recall seeing on the system, no.
Okay. And just a few more things about things you were first aware of when you became involved. So CAMS referrals, we obviously know there were multiple referrals to CAMS from different sources. Do you remember if that's something you were aware of?
I think from recollection, I recall the referral from school and GP. I think it was from recollection.
Did you draw any significance from the fact that there'd been multiple CAMS referrals? Is that unusual, or?
It's not unusual, no.
So did you draw any? Did that indicate any concern to you or particular risk, or?
No, what I tend to do with that is just look and see what intervention was, where they were signposted to. That's the information I'll take from it.
All right. And would you have had a look at the CAMS referral documents when you first started the case?
I would have, yeah.
Okay. And then FCAMS, we know that you were aware about the FCAMS referral because we see it in your handwritten notes. Were you aware that he'd been closed to FCAMS? And this was in March 2020, he would have been closed.
So there was, just to be clear with the FCAMS, that I haven't had sight of the FCAMS referral. That was just taken from information within the case file. So that may well have been on the referral or one of Scott's first case notes. I can't say exactly where I got that from, but the FCAMS referral hadn't been cited by me, or the assessment hadn't been cited by me. Just ask me that question again. Sorry,
I was just asking if you were aware that he'd been. I know that you were aware he was referred to FCAMS, but were you also aware that he was closed to FCAMS in March 2020?
I couldn't be 100% certain to say I did or I didn't.
Right. The inquiry's had some evidence that Mr. Hicklin, who was the person assigned to the case in FCAMS, he had sent 2 letters following the 2 multidisciplinary meetings that took place, and these, due to a scanning error, these were never uploaded onto the CAMS electronic patient system. So do you remember if you would have ever have sight of those letters, or if they weren't on the records, you likely didn't see them?
I've never seen the FCAMS, yeah.
No. So is it fair to say you wouldn't have known the extent of which FCAMS were involved necessarily?
No.
Or the recommendations that they made?
No.
Presumably you also wouldn't have been aware that they'd closed AR to FCAMS, but only because they said they couldn't do an assessment of him until he had an autism diagnosis. and they had invited agencies to re-refer back to FCAMS after if there was a significant change in behaviour or risk behaviour. Were you aware of either of those?
I wasn't aware of them, no.
All right. Did you take any reassurance from the fact that FCAMS had to some extent been involved as far as you were aware?
Yeah. I did take reassurance from them, and also from the youth offending that the work had been completed following his 10-month referral order. And he'd also sought some support from targeted youth support, if I got that the right way around. So that was reassuring to see that the intervention had been completed.
Did that, do you think, change your perception of any risk that he might pose, do you think, looking back?
No, because risk is always assessed dynamically in the present there and then, so it wouldn't never have steered me away from asking a question about risk to him. That's a given assessment anyway.
And then just final point on this, prevent, we know from your note that you were aware at least of the first prevent referral. Do you remember if you were aware of the second and third prevent referrals?
I don't recall further referrals, no.
And were you aware that he had been closed by prevent by the time you came in?
Yes, I think on my crib sheet, I think I may well have put prevent and then no further action next to it. If I can't remember whether, I think I did put no further action next to it, just double check that. Yeah, open to prevent and then no further action.
All right. Could you just, is that the first page?
Yeah, apologies. It's just under where it says assessed by criminal justice team, so just towards the top. Find parents in 2000 and then work your way
Thank you.
down.
Yeah, and so this is document AHCH 000189 and it's page 1. So, and do you remember, similarly with FCAMS, with Prevent, did you take any reassurance from the fact that they'd looked at his case and it was no longer open?
I did, yeah.
In what sense?
Again, like I've just said, their intervention and what I say is the specialist assessors in that field, and that's their area of expertise, that the assessments will have been done.
Right. And then if we could just have a quick look at your witness statement. I think this links back to something that you said earlier. So this is page 4 of your witness statement. Have you got that in front of you? Yeah. Sorry, it's page 4 of the bundle, which is, it's the big number, So looking at paragraph 11 and looking at 5 lines from the bottom, you say, my focus was drawn to the most recent presenting issues, which at that time were anxiety and support for AR with his autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. Therefore, this was to be my area of discussion when meeting with AR to create a formulation of need and identify the appropriate treatment intervention. Yeah. And I think you mentioned earlier that it was your handover with Sam Coppard that you think led you to kind of have that focus for your session with AR.
That's correct, yeah.
Do you think, looking back at that now, that your focus was more on treating anxiety symptoms and offering support with ASD than considering perhaps any risk he might have posed to others?
Not necessarily, no. So as part of my initial assessment that I would do with every young person that I meet at CAMS, risk is an element that features within that assessment. So that question will have and was asked when I met AR for the first time. So I think for the purpose of the assessment, for the witness statement, I think elaborating a little bit more on that is to say that it wasn't just that I was going in to speak to him about. There was a more structured assessment to it.
But it's fair to say that the matters you set out there that was the focus of what you were doing with AR?
They were the presenting issues, yeah.
Did you, at any stage of your involvement with AR, think about whether he might have a conduct disorder? Is that something you would diagnose or investigate?
No.
Why is that? Is that because it would be someone else's job to look into?
Yeah, it's not an area of my expertise in that. I've never worked with conduct disorder before and I've never assessed, so that wouldn't be something.
Would that be a role for the consultant psychiatrist?
Psychiatrist, yeah.
Right. If you met someone and you had suspicions they might have a conduct disorder, is that something you would flag to the psychiatrist?
Yeah, that would be flagged to psychiatrist or within an MDT meeting.
And did you have any concerns about the way AR was presenting that he might have a conduct disorder?
No, considering I'd only met him on 2 occasions.
Right. Okay, thank you very much for that. So that was kind of bringing the first topic to the end about what you knew at the start. I just have a couple of very short questions about information sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to understand how information was flowing between CAMS and other agencies.
Okay.
Are you able to just briefly explain how that worked or how you expected it to work?
Just from when I was allocated
Yes.
to AR. So initially I wasn't aware of who was involved with AR at the time, so I did have a telephone conversation with Dad to try and ascertain that information from him, which Dad did provide for me, and I made contact with the school and the inclusion team as well, to get a bit of an understanding of why they were involved, what work they were going to be doing with them, because often we can find that sometimes interventions can overlap, and I think for the interest of the young person it's always really important to have clear roles of responsibility so they know who's doing what and when. So that's what I was trying to establish at the time.
And if there were, so we covered a number of incidents earlier that weren't brought to your attention or you weren't aware of, would you have expected agencies that were aware of those incidents to be reporting that information into CAMS?
Yes.
And how was CAMS information shared with other agencies? So if you found out something concerning, how would you share that with other agencies?
So sometimes it can be done via a group telephone call, if we call a professionals meeting together, dependent on the significance of the information that was coming in. If it was urgent, then we would call an emergency professionals meeting and that information would be given with all involved. Sometimes we can have group emails on our secure network, so we can just send a quick email so we know that everybody's getting it. So yeah, that it would be to contact the agencies and let them know what information I had.
Okay. And when information was shared, was that only when a concern arose, or was there a kind of routine pattern of information sharing?
No, I would say that there wasn't a routine pattern of information sharing.
Mm-hmm.
The meetings that were set up by myself in, I think it was March and May, September, forgive me for the dates if they're not correct, I initiated them meetings for the agencies to come together, and then keeping in contact with regards to any further updates didn't easily flow, as you say.
I understand. So I now want to move to ask you some questions about your, kind of go through the narrative of your contact and involvement with AR. It's in your statement you very helpfully set out a very detailed account of all of your contact and involvement with AR. So I'm not going to go through every single appointment or email or telephone call. I'm just going to pick out the perhaps more key events that took place. So I think if we start towards the beginning, one of the first notable things that happened is that AR didn't attend his first scheduled appointment with you on the 26th of September. Yeah. And as I understand from your statement, you called his father to find out why he'd failed to attend, and he said that AR didn't like meeting new people or being in an unfamiliar environment, and that he was asleep.
Yeah, that's correct.
But it was agreed that you were going to reschedule.
Yes.
And I think you alluded to this earlier, but AR or his father also shared contact details for the local authority, inclusion team and Pressfield School.
That's correct, yeah.
And you contacted the school later that day.
Yeah.
Right. I'll then skip forward a bit in the chronology. So I think you had a video appointment on the 20th of October 22.
That's correct, yeah.
And that was attended by AR and his father?
Yeah.
And as I understand from your statement, AR was present but didn't want to be seen on camera or engage.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
And that he only wanted to have CAM's involvement basically for the psychiatry and medication.
That's correct, yeah.
So he wasn't particularly interested in anything you might be able to offer, is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair to say.
And AR's father reported to you that he was taking his medication and his presentation at home seemed a bit better.
That's correct, yeah.
He was eating, seemed happier, and but he was still struggling to leave the house.
That's correct, yeah.
And as I understand from your statement, there wasn't a discussion about risk to self or others at that particular meeting, is that right?
Is that the 20th of October?
Yes.
I think, can I just look,
Yes,
have a
we
look
can
at
have
the
a look at
statements,
it.
is that okay? I think I do ask Dad at that point if there's any deliberate self-harm or if there's any risk.
Yes, so I think
Sorry,
it's,
no risk to self or others was disclosed, so yeah, so...
so you may have discussed it, but they didn't disclose any.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, thank you. And then you had a face-to-face appointment with AR on the 7th of November 22.
Yeah.
And you've covered it in your statement at paragraphs 30 to 34, so I'm not going to rehash the details that are there. Just to pick out one particular detail, this is at paragraph 32. There it says that AR offered information on how he'd been expelled from the Range High School for carrying a knife and spoke of how he didn't intend to hurt anyone but carried it for his own protection. He denied at that time having thoughts about wanting to cause any harm to his peers, adding that he did not feel comfortable leaving the house without his parents due to increasing anxiety. So this is in November 22.
Yeah.
He goes on at paragraph 33 to, you explain there that AR shared how police had previously been called to the family home 5 times within a 12-month period. He wouldn't elaborate that any further, even though you tried to encourage him that it was a safe space to do so. Did you, when AR said that he had carried the knife but didn't intend to hurt anyone and used it for his own protection, did you take any steps to consider the accuracy of or honesty of that statement, or?
I think at the time, given that it was the first session with AR and what I tried to do was build a rapport up, so I didn't at that time then challenge AR to say, because this is what I've already read. I'd already noticed that we were dealing with a young person that already felt judged by his system, by his family anyway, and given that first, I didn't push.
I understand why you might not want to challenge him on it in the session, but did you take his word for what he was saying, or behind the scenes were you thinking that might contradict some of the other evidence that you'd seen about him?
Yeah, because obviously some of the information that was on the system was different to what AR was saying.
So how much comfort or reassurance did you take from him saying that he didn't intend to hurt anyone when thinking about risk?
I think following on from just as my witness statement goes down there, I do speak to AR directly about how he feels at the moment about that young person, about his peers, and whether he does feel that he would hurt anybody again on the present day, not historically. And he did say that he didn't. Again, this was the first time that I've met him. Obviously, as you can appreciate, my role is to not to judge the young person that's sitting in front of me and to build that rapport with them. And my hope was the session that followed 2 weeks later, I could really start to delve a little bit more deeper with him.
I understand. Yeah, and then you were due to see him, I think, on the 28th of November 22, but he failed to attend that appointment.
He did.
And then I understand from your statement that in December 22 he reached the top of the waiting list for CBT,
That's
cognitive
correct.
behavioural therapy. You set out the details there, but in short, you informed AR and his parents about this opportunity, but they didn't ultimately opt in to ensure that he received the treatment.
That's correct, yeah.
And I understand you then saw AR in a face-to-face appointment on the 16th of January 2023.
Yeah.
And you say in your statement that he only wanted to remain open to CAMS at that stage for basically medication, and he didn't want to have any further involvement. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Was there anything else significant about that appointment that you can remember? Anything?
On the 18th of January.
16th of January.
16th of
yes.
January. Can I just have a look at my witness statement?
Of
just
course,
to,
yes.
Yeah.
So it's paragraph 53.
Yeah, so that session did, it didn't last as long as what we needed it to, and also the dad had refused to complete the ARCADS questionnaires with me during that session as well when he'd returned, and just that again at that point where I'd met AR face to face, I'd also asked about harm to himself and also harm to others.
And and you've recorded at 56 of your statement that he didn't disclose any deliberate self-harm or urges to self-harm, and didn't share any ideations of harm to others.
That's correct, yeah.
All right. Then if we move forward to February 23, so this is the 16th of February, you explain at 60 of your statement that his father called you to ask for your support completing an educational healthcare plan.
That's correct,
right, an EHCP. And you offered a further appointment to be able to do that.
Yes.
Is it right that you also warned AR's father that if he failed to attend that appointment, you were going to request a discharge from CAMS due to further appointments?
I think it was discussion with MDT before, because obviously discharge has to be a collective
Right.
decision that's made, it's not a sole decision. So I think if I recall, I said I would be taking it to MDT to discuss further.
Okay. And would that be standard practice if you've got a young person who doesn't want to engage further with CAMS?
Yeah, when he's withdrew consent.
I understand. You then say in your statement at 63 that you had an appointment on the 1st of March 23 which AR failed to attend.
Correct, yeah.
And you explain that you didn't see him for any further case management sessions after that point, but he stayed open because of slight technicality in the system where his parents were having family therapy, and so he had to have a case manager allocated.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think there might have been 2 further appointments that were requested after March, and I think that follows my attendance at a multi-agency meeting where I see that AR was engaging with agencies, so I was trying to make another opportunity to engage him with our service.
But he didn't.
He didn't, no.
All right. Yes, and you explain in your statement there was a multi-agency meeting on the 2nd of March 23. That's covered at paragraph 65 of your statement, so I don't need to trouble you for further details about that. And there was a further multidisciplinary team meeting on the 8th of March 2023. So this is paragraph 74 onwards of your statement. You've set out in some detail there the key points from that meeting, but in short, you highlighted at the meeting a lack of engagement with CAMS. Do you remember
Yes.
that? That there was a strained family dynamic with parents struggling to set boundaries.
Correct, yeah.
AR was struggling to sleep and was being prescribed sertraline by psychiatry.
Yeah.
And there was a general concern, I think, at that meeting that AR's needs were not being met.
By whom?
Just find you the point in the statement. So it's bottom of, so it's paragraph 75.
75, I'm with you, yeah, I've got it.
You say that there was a general feeling that AR's needs were not being met. Do you remember in what sense that was? Was it in terms of from parents or from agencies?
I think with regards to that there was always a difficulty with parents to engage and see the relevance and importance of CAMS sessions. They didn't feel that it fell under the health category, and I felt that the parents weren't supportive of our interventions that we were attempting to offer, and then obviously cancellations on the day by dad or just not turning up was a worry with that. So I think in relation to that, and obviously not being in education as well.
I understand. If we could now have a look at an email exchange that you had with Dr. Molyneux, and this was on the 15th of May 23. So this is, in our bundle, it's page 293. This is document AHCH 0000185. And if you just have a look at page 294 of the bundle, and at the bottom of the page you'll see there's an email from AR's father to Pressfield School, and I think that this was copied to you and Dr. Molyneux, is that right?
Yeah.
Effectively, it was an email to the school from AR's father saying that he wanted AR to have a different teacher on the basis that he found, AR found a particular teacher to be boring.
Correct, yeah.
And we can see Dr. Molyneux forwards that to you with 3 exclamation marks, and then you reply at 9:20 on the 15th of May. Seriously, this is more systemic than mental health, do you think? I feel the parents aren't clear on how to manage AR's ASD. Then you talk a bit about the fact that there's a review meeting, and you say this case baffles me. What did you mean when you said it's more systemic than mental health?
Basically, with regards to boundary setting with families, and we knew that there was a strained relationship between AR and his dad within that home anyway, and also with his other brother. In the sense that parents in 2000 had been completed, but also we were asking to do riding the Raffords, which is specific work for autism, because conversations I had with dad and mum made me question whether they understood autism and whether they needed some support with regards to strategies to support AR at home. So that's where I was coming from with regards to systemic.
I understand. And then we have Dr. Molyneux. If you go to the previous page, he sends a reply later that morning, and he says, don't know whether it's over-accommodation, safeguarding, gaslighting, or some combination of the above. But yeah, the one thing that's clear is that it's systemic. What did you understand his comments to mean, particularly about over-accommodation, safeguarding and gaslighting?
I think with regards to the over-accommodation, again, like I've mentioned earlier about the encouragement or lack of encouragement from parents towards AR to attend his meetings, changes in appointments and venues, so home visits, no video calls, no telephone call, no clinic call. It presented that AR was telling them what he wanted, but what in a way that it wasn't his voice was being expressed, it was more a dictation. So that with regards to over-accommodation, I think with regards to that one as well, I'm not quite sure how Dr. Molyneux responded, but there was a lot around fast food as well with AR, and he would say what he would eat and when he would eat, and parents would give him that. Safeguarding wise, I don't think it was anything with regards to AR likely to suffer significant harm or suffering from significant harm in any way. I think that was more a case of the fact that he's out of school, and therefore that's a worry in itself, that he's not getting his education and he's not going to meet them milestones. Gaslighting, if my memory recalls, I think that was in relation to I think it was regards to parents, specifically dad, kind of not sharing with agencies or contradicting things that was being said to agencies. I'd have to go back over my statement, sorry, I can't.
Did you share the concerns that Dr. Molyneux was voicing in that email?
Yes.
All right. We can then go forward to, on the 16th of May 23, you completed a CAMS CYP current view form.
Yes.
Do you want to just briefly explain what that form is?
Yeah, so that it's a children and young persons form which God, I'm trying to do it from memory now, the line's just come on. It looks, because it's changed as well.
Do you want
so
to
I'm
have a look
trying
at the
to
form while you're doing?
Could that, if that was
Yeah.
okay, because I don't
So
want to say the new one and get
It's
it mixed
page 220 of the bundle.
Thank you.
For the recording, it's AHCH 000164 at page 147 to 148. And so if you go to page 220 of the bundle. That should be the May one.
Thank you.
So this is the one completed by you on the 16th of May.
Yes.
I think you were just explaining essentially what this form is.
Yeah, so with regards to this form, what we do is we have a rating, low, it was low, moderate, severe, and that will be within a series of brackets in questions, bundles of 5, where we look at a young person, kind of what their anxiety is like, whether they leave the home, if they pose any risk to self or others, any difficulties with like their extremes of mood, and we rate them on, as I say, from low to severe, I think it is.
But this is different, as I understand it, to the risk management tool entries that you fill out. Is that
This
right?
is completely different
Yeah.
to risk management, yeah.
Okay.
This current view is based on the here and now, so
Right,
what's
understand.
happening today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've completed this in May 23. I think you quite candidly say in your statement that you accept it should have been completed back in September 22 when it first came
Shut off, yeah.
in, but essentially you had a high caseload at that time. And
That's correct, yeah.
so was it essentially a resourcing issue, do you
It
think?
was, yeah.
Right. And we touched on, just one moment. Right, so if we have a look at the next page, so for us it's page 221 for those not using the hard copy bundle, it's page 148 of the document. And question 16, it says poses risk to others, and you've selected not known. You explain in your statement you think that's probably a mistake, and you would have intended to click none, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Knowing, well, at that time you obviously were aware that he'd had quite a concerning previous history, including possession of knives, attack on a fellow pupil, and violence and verbal aggression towards his father. Did you take those factors into account when thinking about assessing risk here?
Not at this point, because as I've said earlier, this form is the here and now and the present. It doesn't allow for historic. That's where we have made changes within our system now, that we do have a comments box that we can put that in, but ultimately historical information will be in the risk assessment and care plan.
Right. But would the current assessment of risk, would that not take into account what's known that somebody's done previously, given that if someone's done something very, very serious in the past, but they're currently they're saying at the moment they're not going to do anything again, wouldn't you factor in that past information as well? Or shouldn't you?
Not within here, that would be for the risk assessment.
Right. Did you feel you could accurately assess risk in this form when you didn't have eyes on him, in the sense that he wasn't engaging with treatment at that time?
Yeah, is this the May, is it, that I've completed this one?
Yes,
Just
May
myself with the
23.
date, yeah. So I had seen him on 2 occasions where risk was assessed, and I had also spoken to Dad and also with the agencies at this point as well, who were not raising any concerns at that time to risk to self or risk to others. So I did feel that what the current status at that time was that he did not present any risk.
Okay. And if we look, if we go back to the first page of that current view form, so for you it's page 220, we can see in questions 6 to 9, depression and low mood is marked as severe. I'm asked to ask you, was that a diagnosis or just some symptoms that he was presenting that you were concerned about? Where did that come from?
Yeah, no, so that I would never have diagnosed with depression. That is just to kind of evidence there really that he was inside, and what he was presenting was with his low mood, and obviously what Dad was telling us, low mood, agency's low mood. So I deem that appropriate to put it as severe.
I understand. And at that time, did you do anything in terms of trying to escalate concerns about low mood or depression?
I think at that time, and forgive me if I've got this date wrong, I think targeted support services were coming in, or due to be coming in, who were going to be doing some work around anxiety and also around getting out into the community to support, obviously, to lift his moods, to integrate him into the community around and get him involved in social clubs and stuff. If I'm correct in thinking, that might have been within the May meeting, or was it, I can't remember if it was the March meeting.
All right.
I can't recall.
Well, we're going to come on to the multidisciplinary meeting on the 25th of May.
Okay.
So that is on page 22 of your statement, paragraph 94 onwards, you deal with that.
Yeah.
Yes. So you set out quite a bit of detail there, which I won't go over now. Safe to say that in overview at that meeting, is it right that there was a report that AR had attended school slightly more?
Yes.
And that was viewed to be a massive step forward for AR.
Yeah.
And despite that, Dr. Molyneux was still reporting patchy engagement and that he'd not seen AR in clinic.
Yes.
All right. And over the summer of 2023, I understand that you offered some further appointments, but AR didn't attend.
That's correct, yeah.
I think that's probably what you were referencing earlier when you said,
was.
yeah. Okay, and then 5th of June 2023, there was an updated care plan for AR, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So this is, if you could look at page, so it's the document that starts on page 74. This is AHCH 000164, and we're going to look at pages 155 to 156, which for you will be page 228.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, so we see this is a care plan completed by you on the 5th of June, and history and presenting problems you record there, referred to CAMS due to low mood, radicalisation, bringing knife to school, attack on peers, police involvement. To what extent was that information still being sort of actively considered or taken into account at that stage, would you say?
I think regards to obviously the low mood that was being discussed, radicalisation and bringing the knife to school, I think in the early part of one of the meetings it might have been briefly discussed, with nothing to kind of bring up to say this is something that agencies or parents are still concerned about.
Okay, and then let's jump forward slightly in the narrative to September 23 and to 25th of September, which is so you'll be aware Dr. Molyneux conducted a home visit, and then I think he emailed you on the 25th to essentially give you an update to let you know how it had gone. And is it right that that home visit had been triggered essentially because he was concerned that AR hadn't attended his medication review appointments and he hadn't seen him for over 6 months?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, if we could have a look at his email. This is, for you it's on page 241, I believe. This is AHCH 000145. So it's an email, but it looks like somebody's added it into the CAMS record as to make sure it's captured. And quite a lot of detail set out there, but in summary, Dr. Molyneux says that he hasn't seen AR for over 6 months, he hasn't taken medication, he was staying in his bedroom and hadn't attended college, and he'd only attended a few times last in the term. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
He also said that AR hadn't left the house for a few months and was spending all his time watching videos online, including late into the night. And he hadn't had a bath or shower in the last month. Is that right?
Yeah.
He notes that early help were closing the case, but it seemed as though a social worker was involved. Yes.
That's correct, yeah.
And then he concludes that he was struggling to see if there's any further role for psychiatry or CAMS as a whole.
Yes.
And you explain in your statement that you had a verbal exchange, you think, with Dr. Molyneux after that email, but you didn't make a record of that call.
No.
Okay. I don't know if you saw Dr. Molyneux's evidence to the inquiry or not, but he conceded in his evidence that he was unaware of the vast majority, really, of AR's forensic history, save that he knew that AR had brought a knife into school. He had some awareness of the hockey stick incident and also the knife on the bus incident. And he was asked if you'd known what was capable of being known at the time about risk history, risk to others, wouldn't all of these features, so increasingly isolating himself, he's disengaged, not engaging with mental health professionals, spending increasing time on computers, wouldn't they have flagged up actually as an increased risk of concern about the risk to others? And he said, I think that's a fair comment, it would have put a different complexion on things. Even if not by themselves, they were necessarily hugely significantly so. And it could only have increased the sense of a risk of harm to others, so that would warrant further explanation. So that was what he said about it. But we know that you were aware of quite a lot of the forensic history, although not every incident. Did you at that time consider whether that history should have raised an increased concern about risk to others in light of what Dr. Molyneux was telling you here?
I think what could have happened there was more of an exploration on the computer and seeing what was going on to aid an assessment, really. Again, at that time, we didn't have any current evidence to suggest that he was at risk. He wasn't leaving the home. We knew that. He was not leaving that home without mum or dad, which from memory I think was very rare. But I think what could have been done differently there was exploring further with that computer usage.
Do you think, looking back now and knowing what Dr. Molyneux did and didn't know, is it concerning to you that as the treating consultant psychiatrist he was operating unaware of much of the forensic history?
Just read that one again, sorry.
Yeah, it's just whether you think it's concerning that Dr. Molyneux, as the treating psychiatrist, was unaware of much of AR's history at that time.
I think it would have aided his assessment. As he said there, had he have known of it, it would have given him more to assess.
what was the expectation in terms of information sharing between the case manager and the psychiatrist? Did you expect him to be doing his own review of the CAMHS records, or were you expected to brief him on events in the CAMHS record?
Yeah, so generally how it works when you work with psychiatry is that they would review their own, the record themselves, historically, and then when you're allocated, if there's anything of significance from a session or from any type of agency, then what we tend to do is draft an email, or if they're in, we'll go and speak to them directly. But if there's nothing within a session note of any relevance, then we would leave it for them to look prior to their next review.
Okay. And you've been provided previously with a copy of the report of Dr. Irani, the expert, which is the inquiry instructed. And she says at 3.2.2.1 of her report, I don't necessarily need you to turn it up, but it's DRI 501. So she says AR was out with parental control. He'd been presenting a risk in the family home. He was looking withdrawn, spending considerable periods of time on his computer, not looking after himself. He hadn't showered for more than a month. Right back in September 2023, when reviewing his attendance and parents' inability to make him engage, these should have been escalated through safeguarding. And around this time, when CAMHS were unable to meet directly with him, consideration should have been given to carrying out a Mental Health Act assessment, and safeguarding concerns should have been escalated through Children's Services. So that's what she would have expected CAMHS to do. Who in CAMHS would have had responsibility for, firstly, considering a Mental Health Act assessment, and secondly, escalation of safeguarding concerns?
The mental health act assessments would be consultant psychiatrist, and the safeguarding supervision would be the responsibility of both myself, the case manager, and consultant psychiatrist.
Looking back at those factors now of concern and the view of Dr. Irani, do you accept that in hindsight you should have raised safeguarding concerns through Children's Services at that point?
Yeah, in hindsight, yeah.
And Dr. Irani's conclusion really is that the CAMHS response to AR's deterioration wasn't adequate for those reasons. Would you presumably agree with that then?
Just say that again, sorry.
Yeah, whether you'd agree with Dr. Irani's view that the CAMHS response to AR's deterioration, certainly by September 23, wasn't adequate.
Yeah, I would agree.
I know we touched on FCAMS at the beginning. The inquiries had evidence from Mr. Hicklin, the FCAMS practitioner, who was assigned to AR's case, and he was asked if there was a period of being isolated, leaving the house, not taking medication, increasing time on computers, lack of washing, not attending school. In the context of an ASD diagnosis, he was asked whether that should have prompted a re-referral to CAMHS, and he said that it should. Looking back in hindsight, do you think that's another thing that perhaps should have been done?
I think given had I had sight of the FCAMS assessment and was aware of it and the recommendations that were made, then yeah, a referral would have been made back.
I understand. So I'm moving on from that September 23 part now. So we've been going for just over an hour. Do you want to have a short break?
Would you mind?
Of course. It's 3:10 and we're just resuming. So just before the break, we looked at September 2023.
Yeah.
I'm going to sort of skip forward a bit, but it's fair to say that over the months that followed, so October 23 through to February 24, AR's engagement didn't improve.
It didn't then.
And neither you nor Dr. Molyneux were able to see him in that time.
I can't be 100% certain with Dr. Molyneux without looking, but I know I definitely...
You didn't see him?
Yeah, I definitely didn't then.
So in that period, he wasn't having contact with mental health professionals, and he was disengaged from the treatment. As I understand it, the only sort of real potential change was that AR's father informed Dr. Molyneux in an email that AR had taken a shower on one occasion.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Looking back now at that period in hindsight, do you think that that extended period of disengagement with CAMS should have given rise to some concern about AR?
I think looking back in hindsight with it, definitely, yeah.
Right. It's fair to say that there were problems engaging him throughout his treatment with CAMS. Do you think there's anything more that CAMS could have done to try to re-engage AR?
I think if we looked at maybe some more different ways that we could have encouraged him to come, maybe on reflection I've thought of maybe like a therapeutic letter that I could have wrote to AR to kind of set out what the intention was, how we could have maybe looked at potentially key work, although he was very clear there, and I think that's what made it so difficult. He was very clear he didn't want us involved, and he was 17 years of age who would remove consent. It did make it quite difficult.
And I now just want to turn to the 22nd of February 2024. This is when you did a review of the risk and care plan, and you also did a CAMS current view.
Yes.
So this is document, so for you it's on page 283. This is document AHCH 000154. And I think, as you helpfully explained earlier, there we can see that various case managers have put notes on this, and you can see it says note by Sam Steed, then for various ones, note by Mr. Morgan.
Right.
Do you recall, and perhaps looking at this, did you add any new information, or were you just reviewing what was already there? Do you remember? Because I can't see, unless I've missed it, that there's one with your name next to it.
I think with regard to the update, I don't think there was further risk that I'd put on, as there was no risk to update, but I think it might have been within the care. So the risk assessment and the care plan were one document at that time. So I'm just querying whether it may well have been that I'd updated the care plan to maybe put in about his non-engagement.
Yes, if that helps you. So on page 286, I think.
That's it. That's it.
So and here it says case manager. It's got your name. So do you think that this was the update that you added that we see? So this is page 4 of AHCH 000154.
Yeah. Okay, yes, I'm just checking. Yeah, it's. I think the update for me has been the anxiety prevented him from the home, and then the several not attended appointments into case management sessions, and then with noting down that the consent had been withdrawn.
All right. So we can see there's some record of previous incidents here. So it says radicalisation, bringing knife to school, attack on peers, police involvement. Current understanding of the problem is struggles with anxiety that prevents him from leaving the home to attend school and appointments. Frequently expressed that he's happy with his current life and does not want support other than medication. So we don't see many of the other incidents that AR was involved in that you were aware of. Is that the sort of thing that, in hindsight, you think you should have recorded in either the care plan or the risk plan, or was that not the expectation?
I think personally, yeah, I should have put more detail within there, and also with dates as well, because I think that would have been a lot more helpful to break it down.
I understand. And if we look now at, for you, it's over the page, I think, yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is the child and young person current view that you did the same day. This is AHCH 000155, and we can see again this is the 22nd of February 24. And for question 16, it's recorded poses risk to others, none. Had you known that which was knowable, so by that I mean the stuff that you did know, but also the things that other agencies perhaps knew and didn't communicate to CAMS, would you have reached a different conclusion about that risk, do you think?
Yeah, certainly if agencies had shared risks with me at that time, that certainly wouldn't have been none.
Not necessarily sharing risk, but if they told you about, do you remember at the start we went through those various incidents that you weren't aware of? If those incidents, for example, had been brought to your attention, do you think that would have factored into this risk assessment?
I think, again, as earlier stated, the current view is the present risk, not historical.
But if you'd known at that stage all of the concerning forensic history in relation to AR, would that have impacted your assessment of his current risk in February 24?
Not necessarily, because at the time we'd had 2 years, was the 2 years prior to me completing, that was the last incident. So again, this is based only on current.
I understand. Following completion of this risk assessment, we know that on the 16th of April 24, Dr. Molyneux decided to discharge AR from CAMS psychiatry, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Did he have a discussion with you prior to making that decision, or is that a decision he would have taken by himself?
If I recall, I think myself, Dr. Molyneux and also Sam Coppard, ACL, had a conversation prior where we kind of set out the plan. Once family therapy had been completed, then they were closed to CAMS, following obviously Ant's, Dr. Molyneux's appointment in the home and not being comfortable with prescribing the medication. The plan was already, we'd had that conversation. I don't recall him coming to me again saying, is this correct? I do recall following him saying, I've discharged AR from psychiatry, because the letter will get sent over, you see, so.
And the final family therapy session, I think, took place on the 23rd of April 24.
I think so, yeah.
And then the sort of final involvement you had, we skip forward slightly to July 23rd of July 24.
Yes.
So this is AHCH 000160. Which should be at page 289 for us. Apologies, I'm just having difficulty finding that in the bundle. Alright, I think if we look at the current view for the same day first. So this is AHCH 000159 on page 289. So this is the current view form. Again, we've got the same question there. Question 16 poses risk to others, none. I think we may be missing the AHCH 000160 from the bundle. I know that your legal team may have had a hard copy of the papers. Do we have those here to look at? Or could they be, could we take a, let's just take a 5-minute break just to get those documents. Thank you. Okay, so we just had a short break to obtain a missing document, which has now been obtained, and it's now 3:30, and we'll just carry on. So we are looking at AHCH 000160, which is the CAMS risk assessment and management tool. And this is the entry date of the 23rd of July 2024. Again, we see in this record that there's various notes completed by Sam Steed and Mr. Scott Morgan. Do you recall whether you added additional text when you updated it, or whether you were reviewing what they had put there?
I think it was a review and the additional information. As I said earlier, the risk management and the care plan was one form. So I think my update was going onto the care plan.
And is that, you can see, all right, so for the actual risk assessment, you don't think you added any further detail to that which was already here?
No, I'm just thinking with regards to any incidents that has occurred. No, there was nothing else to add in there.
So do you think in hindsight it would have been appropriate to include, for example, AR's, the factors we went through earlier, so AR's increasing time on the computer, disengagement from treatment, not leaving the house, not washing, those kind of factors?
Yes, I think definitely that should have been within the risk assessment. I do allude to it in the care plan, but not as in depth as it should have been.
And it's also fair to say, looking at the records that the previous case managers have added, whilst there are some of the incidents, certainly in terms of forensic previous history, we don't necessarily see all of the incidents that would have been in the available to CAMS practitioners.
That's correct, yeah.
The inquiry has obviously heard evidence from Dr. Vicky Killen, clinical lead at CAMS, and her evidence was that when she looked at the risk assessments completed by CAMS, she felt that they lacked sufficient detail in terms of risk, as well as a proper understanding of the background history of the concerning events that had taken place in relation to AR. Do you accept that, looking back now?
Yeah, I think with regards to the final risk management tool, I think what I could have done is added more context to what previous case managers had put in, and also, as I've just said, the information I put on the care plan bring over to the risk assessment. I think I've done that with it being just one document rather than two separates. But yeah, there could have been more information put in.
All right, and you say in your witness statement at paragraph 223, you don't necessarily need to turn it up, but at the time of completing the CAMS current view form for AR, there was no evidence to suggest he posed a risk to others. I record as this as poses risk to others none. Had you known everything that was knowable, so that was everything in the CAMS records, everything you in fact knew, but also the other incidents that the other agencies knew and perhaps you weren't aware of, would you have reached a different conclusion about risk, do you think?
I think with regards to the current view, it's present. It's that day. It doesn't take into account historical risk. That's what the risk assessment is for. I think what I could have done on that final one is maybe put not known.
Because
I hadn't spoken to any agencies prior to get an update.
So even with all your knowledge at the time about the history and everything that the other agencies knew that you weren't aware of, but you do now know, you still think the current risk in July 24 should have been either not known or none?
I think what's really difficult is it was a few days prior to the incident that happened, which makes it look awful. It really does, and I've never lost sight of that. Can I take a break?
Yeah, of
Sorry.
course, take a minute. Okay, thank you. So we're just starting again shortly before 3:45. And the question that I was asking you about is whether essentially you think you still would have posed as risk to others, none, in light of all of the forensic history in AR's case.
So I think given the way it looks very black and white, and you can see it was only some days prior to the incident that happened. At that time, the risk, I wasn't aware to others. There was nothing had been given me any evidence to suggest that there was. It's been successfully closed down at family therapy, successfully closed down at psychiatry, and I personally wasn't aware of what had happened the week prior. Had I have known that, AR would never have been discharged from CAMHS.
Right. And the inquiry has heard evidence from Dr. Killen, the clinical lead, about the risk assessments completed by CAMHS. And her view was that the risk assessments did lack detail as well as a proper understanding of the background history. Would you agree with that, looking back at it now?
Yeah, I think the information could have been padded out a lot more.
And ultimately, Dr. Killen said that she felt the risk assessment fell far short of what would have been expected, and that she felt the risk posed by AR should have been recorded. Looking back now, would you agree with that?
Just say that one again to me, sorry.
Yes, so she well, I'll maybe take it in two parts. Her view was that the risk assessment fell very far short of being acceptable.
Yes.
You'd accept
I agree,
that?
yeah.
And her view was that the risk posed by AR at that time should have been recorded there rather than entering none.
I think for reasons said, with the evidence that was given to me, was presented at that time, and with that being a current document and not an historic, then no, I wouldn't agree.
Right. I now just want to step away from those specific risk assessments and just ask you a bit about risk assessment generally. So you will have seen that that's covered by Dr. Irani in her report. She's made some findings about risk. Dr. Killen agreed with the conclusions of Dr. Irani that the risk assessment tool, so the actual tool itself being used by CAMHS, was inadequate. And because of that, they both said there were failures earlier on in CAMHS' involvement to properly assess risk correctly, and by the later stages that led to risk not being adequately assessed. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, yeah.
And Dr. Irani went on to say that she felt a structured professional risk assessment tool like a SAVRI should have been used in AR's case. Is that something that you would be qualified to carry out?
I have been trained in SAVRI, however never used, and that would come from an instruction from senior to request that type of assessment. Forgive me if I get this a little bit mixed up because I've never worked with SAVRI before, but I'm almost certain that we would look to FCAMHS for that, but I couldn't be 100% certain on it.
And did you ever consider whether a SAVRI should be conducted during your time on AR's case, either by FCAMS or somebody else or someone in CAMS?
No.
Why is that? Is that because it's not something you typically do, or no
Yeah,
reason?
it's not something I've never used before.
Okay. As to discharge then, finally, you say at paragraph 64 of your statement that if there are no risk-presenting behaviours or social care involvement, the young person is discharged. Does it follow that if there are risk-presenting behaviours to others, then the young person would not typically be discharged from CAMS?
No, the young person wouldn't be discharged.
And if they weren't discharged, what steps would follow on from that at CAMS, or would it depend?
So, in relation to AR, given that he was only a week, I think, maybe 2 weeks away from his 18th birthday, then we would have been looking to transition over to adult if we identified a need there. Similarly, sometimes CAMS does close at the age of 18. However, if there's ongoing intervention, we will keep the young person open till 19. But we would have liaised with adult transition to see what support would be available and make the necessary referrals there.
We know that you discharged AR from CAMS on the 23rd of July, so the same day as the risk management tool and
Yes.
the code view. And we've got the closure record. Which is at page 240 of your bundle.
240, did you say?
Yes. And this is AHCH 000161. So here it's recorded, do you consider that the reasons for AR's referral, looking at reasons for closure, treatment completed, is what you've marked.
Yeah.
Would that be like a drop-down box, or is that something you type in?
No, it's a drop-down box.
And you note here that the reasons for the referral, which we've covered already, low mood, radicalisation, knife to school, attack on peers, police involvement.
Yes.
Did you feel that those matters had been addressed by the CAMS treatment, or did you have a view on that?
I think with regards to the radicalisation and the knife and the police involvement, I think throughout my allocation with AR is that had been dealt with previously by specialised agencies. With regards to low mood, I think there was very much an up and down pattern with AR with regards to his mood. Some days some contact would be that he was low, some contact would be really good and he'd showered and he was eating and everything was okay. And I think in context of his autism, I think low mood is something that he will continue to struggle with because by virtue of his autism.
Did you feel that anything concrete was achieved with AR by CAMS's involvement?
I think if we looked at the trials of medication that he was on, the offers of intervention that were there, and the successful closure of family therapy as well, and the agencies that were involved at the time due to us reaching out and requesting likes of early help. So yeah, I think the support had been there.
Did you have a process within CAMS, I'm asked to ask you this, for assessing either before or after the discharge what had been achieved and whether any issues remained outstanding? Was there a sort of formal system for doing that?
No, not for after discharge. Once the young person's discharged from the from intervention, the discharge. There may well, and I can't be 100% certain. I know there's audits that occur throughout involvement. I'm not 100% certain about afterwards, but
Right.
that's not my area of domain. Sorry, so.
I understand, yeah. It's fair to say that this document doesn't appear to give consideration for ongoing risk of harm to others
Mhm.
posed by AR. Looking back, do you think that's something that should have been covered in this document?
I think with regards to this, the reasons, the summary of referral could have been, as I've said earlier with the risk assessment, that could have been a lot more, could have been more context put into what the incidents were and the dates.
Right. And I'm sorry, I should have picked up with you at the time when you mentioned it, but when we were looking at the risk assessment and the assessment of the current young person form that you completed on the 23rd of July, I think you made passing reference to if you'd been aware of something that happened the previous week. Are you referring to the incident on the 22nd of July 24 where AR got in a taxi and his family believed that he was
Yes.
going off to do another attack and may have a knife?
Yes.
All right. So was that something that you were aware of at the time?
No.
Okay. And if you had been made aware of that, how would that have changed your assessment of risk and the decision to discharge?
There wouldn't have been a decision to discharge, so it would have been police involvement, social care involvement, professional strategy meetings, consideration would have been given to the mental health act, and the team would have obviously been around, but there would have been no way to being discharged from our service.
Right. And throughout the course of your involvement generally, who was it, or which agency did you understand to have lead responsibility for assessing and managing AR's risk?
So from my involvement when I first come in, it was Lancashire County Council, where he was open to the inclusion team. It then I then become involved, and so it was our Lancashire County Council. Then we moved to early help, children's social care. I want to say around about May when Ashley Williams first becomes involved, and then that remains until October 23, if my memory recalls, and then the lead professional is then school because they hold it on a TAF, which is a team around the family.
Right. The inquiry's heard evidence from various individuals from different agencies so far in its hearings. It does appear to emerge that there is an absence of a clear lead responsibility in AR's lead agency with responsibility in AR's case. Would you agree with that? Or do you think that in your view, there was a clear lead agency?
I think when I was in Masons, I always knew who the lead was. I think what failed is the communication following them meetings and follow-up of actions. But I personally did feel like I knew who the lead agency was at that time.
And to be clear, so it was LCC at the start.
The start of my involvement, and then I think I'd have to go back and look at the dates correctly, but I think if it's May when Ashley Williams first becomes involved, that the lead then goes to children's social care, and that remains up until they close, which, if memory serves, I think it's September 23 or October 23, and then it is school, which is Pressfield. They become the team around the family at level 2. That is documented within the minutes as well, that they are the lead professional.
Okay, and you'd expect those lead professionals to be the ones assessing and managing AR's risk,
Yes.
would you? Looking back at it now and your involvement with AR, do you think to some extent CAMS's focus was on treating mental health symptoms, and working on the basis really that risk to others was being dealt with or had already been dealt with by others.
Yes, I think that's fair to say. Certainly when I'd taken over the case, when you do see no further action, there isn't any reports on there like FCAMs that are clearly making recommendations. However, there was no sight of that for us to refer back to. So, yeah, I think it was that the risk at that time had been dealt with, or intervention had been put into support.
When in the discharge note, we don't see any sort of plan for any future requirements or future service needs. Is that type of planning something that CAMS would do?
Sorry, I was going to start interrupting.
No,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah, so we have an adult transition worker that works with our team that we would take, and in this instance I had a conversation with her with regards to AR and what support, if any, would be available. It wasn't deemed appropriate at that time that he needed additional support around a mental health need from adults, but that a conversation is always held with transition to see.
I understand. I'm now asked by one of the core participants to just ask you some questions about general impressions of AR, his family and family dynamics, and I think we've touched on a lot of this already, so I'll take it quite quickly. But firstly, in respect of AR, were you aware or did you identify any of these issues? Minimising seriousness of previous actions, evasiveness, dishonesty, being argumentative, driven by grievance, a lack of reflection, remorse, empathy, or manipulating professionals. Did you see any of that in your experience?
I think on the 2 occasions that I did see him, and on reflection now, there was elements of, that was quite a long list, I'm trying to remember what there was.
Take a few in turn. So minimising the seriousness of previous events that have taken place, or being unwilling to take responsibility for them.
I'm not sure on that one with regards to the session that I had with him over the hockey stick, which he didn't minimise it in a way. I'd be unsure on that one. I'd be unsure.
Any dishonesty?
Not directly with me.
Although we touched on that, the point earlier that he'd said he had no intention of harming anyone with the knife that he had, and obviously we know from the records that wasn't a consistent account.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to explore that any further with him to then make that assumption.
Having lack of empathy or remorse.
Yeah, I think with regards to remorse, yeah. No, not showing any remorse.
And as a professional, did you feel he was manipulating you in any way?
Yeah, but indirectly, as in changing of sessions. I don't want to meet you here, I want to speak to you on the phone. In that sense, it was quite manipulating.
I understand. And what about AR's parents? Were there any particular points that stuck out from your interactions with them?
My interactions with them would go okay with conversations until I would maybe make a suggestion. For example, I suggested early help, wanted to make a referral to early help. Both mum and dad become very defensive with that. They didn't feel that they needed any support, and as with anybody, as a professional in a job, we know what that's like for parents to feel that services are getting involved, and sometimes they feel that they're losing some control and some power of it. And I thought I tried to explain that really well, of how and using Dad's examples of how he told me he was struggling, to give but we did get met with a barrier with anything like that. Again, I think going back to the comment here about over accommodation, I do think parents did over accommodate. I don't think they shared what they should have been sharing with professionals, which made it very difficult for us to assess that risk. Yeah.
We obviously know that you came in to replace Steed after there was some concerns about AR's father's behaviour. Did you have any concerns about his behaviour in the time that you were with AR?
Not to the extent that Samantha Steed had, no.
Right. Okay, I'm now just moving to the last few topics, which can be dealt with quite quickly. So, multi-agency working is the next one, and you say at paragraph 231 of your statement that you found communication with other agencies to be inconsistent, and you give the example there that you wouldn't get responses to your telephone calls and emails, you weren't being invited to meetings by Pressfield. In terms of information sharing, you struggled to get information to be shared with you. And you also highlight that information had been recorded incorrectly in meeting notes, and you didn't receive updated minutes.
That's correct, yeah.
And you found it difficult at times to coordinate professional meetings.
That's correct, yeah.
I think in one particular example in your statement, you say that you were having difficulties obtaining information from social services in October 22.
Yeah.
Do you remember if you ever got the information you were trying to get from them?
No, I've never received it, no.
And Dr. Arani was asked to examine the interagency working in this case, and her conclusions, I'll summarise them, were in short that when other agencies like Prevent were referred to, it was unclear how they carried out their decision making and how this was communicated to the services directly involved with AR. Minutes of multi-agencies were not clearly documented and shared, and her overall conclusion was that there are a number of meetings in the absence of a lead agency, a clear handover process and an appropriate risk assessment, and the interagency working arrangements were not adequate. Dr. Killen agreed with those conclusions in Dr. Arani's report. Would you also agree with those conclusions?
I would, yeah.
Next, record keeping. As you will have seen, the Alder Hay Internal Learning Review found that record keeping in AR's case was not adequate. That conclusion was endorsed by Dr. Arani, and Dr. Killen also agreed with that in her agreed in her evidence that there were issues with record keeping in his case and the standards of records. Would you also agree?
I would
looking
agree,
at it
yeah.
now? And that would be a concern, because if you don't have clear records, that might cause unnecessary treatment or ineffective treatment to be given. And it might also affect risk assessment as well.
Yeah.
Okay, finally then, I just want to turn to your reflections and lessons learned, and also look at any improvements that have been made. So if we could just look in your statement at paragraph 234. So you say, I'm just going to take you to two extracts and then just ask you to comment on them. So firstly, you say, during my allocation to AR as his case manager, he never displayed any risk to self or others, and there was no evidence to suggest that he had any intent on doing what he did on the 29th of July 24. And then at paragraph 236 over the page, you say that even with the benefit of hindsight, there was nothing in the circumstances that prevailed at the time of care provided by AR and his family that indicated a capacity for extreme harm to others. Have you reflected further, and do you still stand by those statements, or is there anything you'd want to change about that?
I think with regards to the point 234, again, that risk was assessed without the historic risk And I think looking back and in hindsight and on reflection, that historic risk should have been looked at.
When you say historic risk, do you mean you were aware, the historic risks you were aware of and you didn't take them into account, or should have taken them into account more fully, or are you referring to incidents that you weren't aware of that you are now aware of?
Yeah, I think if we look at what we weren't aware of and the FCAM's recommendations, I think and given obviously that list that's within that FCAM's recommendation,
The list of things to look out for.
Yeah, I think was a we that would have been very useful for us to have with that too. Again, the in hindsight, with things that we didn't know that were going on.
All right. So if you'd been aware of all of his forensic history that we've covered today, it wouldn't have been your view anymore that there was no evidence to suggest he was intent on doing and causing harm to others. In terms of things that might have been done differently, I think you've already touched on one with the potential of a re-referral to FCAMs if you'd known about the consultation letters.
Yeah.
Looking back now with the benefit of hindsight, would any of the following things have been something that you think could have been done? So further probing of forensic history with AR, his father, and with other agencies.
Yes.
I think we've covered this, but a SAVRI type risk assessment.
Yes. Yeah.
Investigation for conduct disorder. It may be that you can't comment on that if that's not something you diagnose.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. That's not something I would have diagnosed.
But knowing all the forensic history you know now, would those have been warning flags that may have prompted you to flag it to the consultant psychiatrist?
Yeah.
Another issue I'm asked to explore by a core participant is this will probably mean more to you than to me, but care, education and treatment reviews.
Yes.
And recommendations made by that. Is that something that you think could or should have been explored in AR's case?
So the CETR, which is I never get this right, Care, Education Treatment Review, I'd initially began with the DSD, which is the Dynamic Support Database, and that was the tool. AR had come through as green, which remained. So it goes through in my statement kind of what the criteria is, but with 4 he was what we call RAG rated as green, which remains within CAMS.
Okay, and another question that I'm asked to ask you, do you think that AR's involvement with CAMS focused too much on what he and his parents were saying rather than looking at the case in the round? I think what's being alluded to there is also the forensic history.
Yeah, I think with regards to that, as earlier stated, the forensic history, we could have spoke directly or tried to speak more about the forensic history with parents and AR.
Right. And you've set out in your statement at paragraph 238 some improvements that you're aware of that have been made since.
Yeah.
So you refer to improvements within the referral and triage process, changes to documentation. I'm not going to go through all of those changes now as we've got your statement. Are there any other improvements or changes that you want to draw to the inquiry's attention?
I don't think if there was any more. I'm just trying to scan what I've got through there. I think from what I can see, and I do, I forgive if I've got this wrong, but I think the majority of the improvements are within my witness statement.
Thank you. And we have the evidence of Dr. Killen as well, who's also
Yeah.
covered some improvements. Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions unless there was any points that you wanted to raise that we've not already covered. We've covered a lot today.
Not that I can think of, no, but thank you.
Thank you.